It was a hyena's breakfast. People were tearing this thing apart.
It doesn't look like Silent Hill at all, though. It doesn't look like Silent Hill at all. It looks good, but it does not look like Silent Hill.
And I will be honest, soulless. Old, le good. New, le bad.
But, like,
dump shops. Last time I saw a PS Vita was when it was used as an improvised clubbing device by my uncle, too. Trailers when they first hit the web. I didn't like the voice acting, the combat was looking iffy, but more on that later, and the facial animations looked ridiculous. I don't know why people seem to think putting the most expression into your face instantly qualifies as good acting. Please stop doing this. No normal human being reacts like this. Despite being very critical, however, I was still a lot more optimistic in comparison to others. I thought the town looked great. The fog was beautiful, the atmosphere was thick, and I thought the Unreal Engine was a great choice for designing a game like Silent Hill. It certainly looked a lot more promising than Bloodlines 2. Jesus, I don't know what Paradox is doing with my beloved franchise, but they better stop, or else I'm going to assassinate someone with a makeshift gun. At one point, it was almost like people wanted to see this game fail. They were too dug in. That's why they kept changing the review scores on Wikipedia. Before the game even came out, people were calling it Woke Hill 2, Liberal Hill 2, Brokeback Mountain 2, Angela's a fat bitch. I had a feeling most of these guys were probably casual fans of Silent Hill that played it once as a crayon-snorting 8-year-old, and then would go on to play shittier survival horror games like Alan Woke or fucking Obscure. We really need to start gatekeeping more. These guys probably got the Maria ending. Fucking simps. Me personally, as much as I may hate some of the newer AAA titles being released nowadays, I don't ever necessarily feel happy when they fail. Because for as many malicious actors operating within the company, there's just as many passionate workers who want to see their project succeed. And I feel for them. All of this hate, doubt, criticism, and controversy would all pile up into a lot of negative attention, until one day, a lead dev over at Blooper came out and said the magic words: "Give us a chance." A lot of people viewed this as desperation, a way to salvage whatever reputation they had left, but this resonated with me personally. It became very apparent that this wasn't just another cash grab or an egregious exploitation of nostalgic fans. This was a remake done by genuine fans of the source material with supervision from the original Team Silent members. And now that the game is finally out, we can see just how well the modern interpretation favors Silent Hill 2, narrow and subjective standard I hold Silent Hill 2, and shit all over the remake for not living up to it at every turn. But Blooper Team said give us a chance. And you know what? That is exactly what I am going to do. Hey everybody, Green X here. Let's talk about Silent Hill 2. There will be moderate spoilers for this game, so if you're afraid of that type of thing, I suggest clicking off. This is more of a fan's final opinion, the original game back in 2001. In terms of presentation, it blew me and pretty much everyone else out of the water. The game looks gorgeous. It even looks great on low settings, which is good, because I'm stuck with an AMD card for a while, so no ray tracing for me. The game does have some technical problems in my experience, but I don't really care too much about that stuff. If you're curious about that side of the game, I suggest checking out some benchmarking channels to see if Silent Hill New is right for you. Otherwise, you're just gonna have to stick to Silent Hill Enhanced until then. Thankfully, they reworked a lot of James's facial animations and updated the character model with something much more believable. I think he looks good. I'm happy with how his design came out. He looks almost exactly how I'd imagine James to look with modern graphics, and most of his mannerisms also carry over quite well. He's not the complete same though, there are some differences. Luke Roberts as James is a lot sadder and confused, which probably makes more sense considering the lore. He's definitely was wrong and he was going to get whatever it was he came for, which made it even more heart-wrenching to see his stoic attitude come. Easily the best part about the Silent Hill remake is Silent Hill itself. In the original, the town was interesting, the lore had depth, and was visually unique, giving off this awesome, dreamy feeling. But outside of a few select locations, there was really nothing to explore. In the remake, it's different. It's still very much a linear experience, but it all flows together so effortlessly. There's little shops you can break into and loot, spots in people's houses or backyards that you can go to. Whereas the OG Silent Hill feels like the town spawned out of thin air, the remake makes the town feel like everyone just disappeared one day, like everyone went to Rapture. It does trade away some of the uncanny elements in the process though, but that's bound to happen when you redo a 20-year-old project. The best way I can explain it in classic autistic fashion is that whereas the old Silent Hill felt like you were exploring a metaphorical ghost town, the new Silent Hill feels like you're exploring a literal ghost town, by definition. Instead of feeling haunted and ethereal, it feels abandoned and desolate, which is awesome. I love it. It's a new mood for the town that I'm all for. With exploration comes the inevitable encounter with our favorite fetish monsters. The gameplay was looking, and I hate to break it to you guys, but the combat is good. It's really good. Surprisingly good. It's not over the top, it's still sluggish and kind of awkward to control, which I will touch on later, but I feel like that's mostly a good thing. You're still just a guy with a stick, you're not Leon Kennedy. Instead of the game making you feel like a superhero, it makes you feel like you're just another person who's desperate to survive. Very desperate. It is brutal, man. You'll find yourself wailing on monsters, knocking them to the ground, desperately stomping on them until they stop screeching. It's fun, but it's also very taxing and can just faithful to the original concept. It's still wonky, it's still clunky, but this time, unlike every other Silent Hill up until this point, you can actually have a ton of fun with it. It really makes you think of who was in charge of all the shitty promotional material. The combat reveal trailer was all flat and boring and shit, when really, it should have looked like this. Sponsored by a horrible company.
James, I wanted to ask you, what if you can't find...
I need to shoot some news. Fuck, everybody knows that girls can't do shit other than suck dick.
While overall it is a pleasant experience, I do have a couple gripes. To convey my points though, I need to take you back to the original Silent Hill 2. Meet James, husband of the year, jock, kind of an asshole, you get used to him. James had 3 modes: walk, jog, and full sprint. It's said in the lore that James books it. It really adds a sense of subtle badassery to James, because while, yeah, he doesn't have the super strength of most of his enemies, or the unbreakable durability of, say, Pyramid Head, he has what the other monsters lack. Agility. And in that department, he has everyone beat. I mean, this is all a piece of cake to him. He can't be touched. It makes his fights feel a tiny bit more believable. In the remake, James is a lot more melancholic this time around. So naturally, he doesn't have that same spark in his movements. As much effort as he puts into stomping out fetish monsters, he doesn't put too much of that same energy into running the fuck away. Instead, he'll completely lost his sense of urgency in this game. It doesn't help that he feels the need to inspect every item he picks up as well. He'll jog past the monsters, pick up the item, inspect the item, put the item in his back pocket, write it down on his map, scratch his nuts, like, James, let's fucking go! Compare this to the original. He runs in the room, picks up, grab, and go. We're not here to inspect the ripples on the coin or some gay shit like that. This is it. This is the liberal propaganda they've been trying to tell me about. Donald Trump, please save me. Some of you guys may think I'm nitpicking, which, yeah, I am. This was a rare issue for me. I just think it's funny is all. It's like they put so much attention towards the immersive. The animations are pretty. The sound design is fantastic. Zero complaints, all praise. I love the detail where you can hear James's breathing in between walking and doing miscellaneous things. Of course, that also means his breathing intensifies when he gets into combat or running away from a sticky situation. I know I like James quiet and all, but that doesn't mean I literally want him to be a mute. It's really satisfying hearing him actually react to the environment around him. In a realistic way, too. It's not like an episode of Stranger Things. Usually when he sees something inconceivably horrifying, he's pretty much paralyzed with fear. James is still the dumbass we all know and love, though. He's gonna charge that manifestation with a stick and beat its ass. And win somehow. God bless. Of course, his curb stomping sounds are top-notch. Luke Roberts did a great job channeling his inner Isaac. Now that we're deep into the game, we can talk about the characters and how their modern spins have turned out for them. I think I've said my piece with James. He's a pretty great mix of old and new. He carried over a lot of what made Guy Seehe's performance so great, and also inserted his own spin onto it, making it his own. Luke did great, man. I was worried at first, but he knew what he was doing. This wasn't just another job for him. He did the character faithfully and with grace. And he's British, because of course he is. All the great voice actors are British. It's a no-brainer when it comes to James. They had it in the bag. Angela was what really had me worried. In her reveal, I was not impressed. No offense to the actor and whoever put the trailer together, but it was bad. It was really bad. The acting sounded like something you'd hear out of a Netflix exclusive, and not a psychological horror game. It lost quite a bit of its personality and was instead replaced with painfully subpar voice acting, which is kinda what I hated about the previous attempt to revoice the characters. At this point, I was basically expecting them to botch Angela. I had come to terms with it and everything. I wasn't checking for her. However, when the game came out, and by the time her story wrapped up in my playthrough, I was floored. I did a complete 180 and ended up loving almost everything they did with Angela. There are a couple lines that I find to be less emotionally potent than the original Donna Burke performances, specifically the freak out at the end of her boss fight. But other than those little nitpicks, I think they did her character complete justice. Angela is one of my favorite female characters ever written, so to see her done right, especially when I was expecting the complete opposite, is a pleasant surprise. And as for her very controversial redesign, I love it. I understand people's concerns with it because, let's be honest, she does look a lot different, but I find it to be a lot more accurate to what Angela was originally written to be. I mean, she's canonically 19 for crying out loud. This looks like a 19-year-old girl with a disturbing past. You could say it doesn't look faithful to the original, but the original isn't faithful to the original, so apples and oranges. Look, I understand the whole argument about designing characters a certain way for weird socio-political purposes, and maybe there's some truth to it, just for the sake of argument, but in the case of Silent Hill, people started getting weird with it. Like, really weird. The outrage was bordering on comedic genius, too. The memes were fire, until I realized they were being serious. Then I laughed even harder. You guys have played Silent Hill, right? You know, the characters, the backstories, themes of trauma, basically what the entire franchise is based on. I hate to break it to you guys, but this isn't Bayonetta. I just think it's funny how people look at a character that's supposed to be an allegory for sexual assault and years of child abuse, and the media just collectively goes, man, this bitch ugly as fuck! The gaming industry is a funny place, man. If I ever would have fully committed myself to the path of a journalist, I probably would have done a thick line of pure Peruvian coke and gone postal by the time this game came out. In conclusion, despite every corner of the internet telling me otherwise, I think Angela's modern adaptation is fantastic. Gianakil, I want to personally extend my hand out and apologize for doubting you in the first place. I also want to apologize for sharing those memes around in Discord. That was not cool. It was really funny, though. So Angela, much to my surprise, is great. Maria, on the other hand, that's a different story. Maria was looking great when she was revealed. I had high hopes for her, and now that she's finally here and I've beaten the game almost twice at the time of recording, I've come to the realization that I am not a fan. Let's start off light. Her design. She looks great. She's beautiful, seductive, charismatic, kinda. She tries. She even got a few chuckles. But as I played the game, I started to realize that her allure was basically the only thing I was getting from her character. Which may not even be a writing flaw, it may very well just be direction or preference, but I'm gonna try my best to make my argument anyway since I've been thinking about it a lot. 2001 Maria was a different beast. She was that she was much more malicious. She was extremely manipulative, effectively so. She was so well written that she gaslit players into thinking that her ending was the best, despite it being the literal worst ending you could get. That's what made her such a good villain, because her subtlety was unmatched. By the time you figured her out, it was probably already too late. She had her hooks deep in you. The remake, in my opinion, in my very wrong, subjective opinion, completely butchers whatever intimidation factor she once had. She's not as confident. She doesn't have that same 0 to 100 fly off the handle at any moment type of attitude. Again, I just think it has more to do with direction more than anything else. That's why, as weird and as stupid as it may sound, I actually think she did a great job with Mary, whereas Maria is really dodgy. She has the sweeter I just think her delivery was much more effective in the original game. Damn, I sound like a nerd. I need to shove myself in a locker. As for Eddie, there's not much to say about him. He's kind of more generic this time around. He lost of that. I may be alone on that argument, though. There's a couple holes you can poke in that take. Whatever, it's not exactly a hill I want to die on. A Silent Hill. Laura, on the other hand, is perfect. They got an actual child actor for her, which is good. I'm glad they didn't cheap out on that. Her performance lives up to all of the hype, and even exceeds it. Her freak out at James near the end? Man. The feels. Speaking of, I'm really happy about that detail with the leave ending. Instead of playing Overdose Delusion, it plays Theme of Laura, which is an excellent choice. You guys called me crazy for picking that as the outro song for my review. I was curious about how they were going to approach this, since the boss fights in the original were amazing, but only contextually speaking. I'm pretty split. I like the new boss fights. I really like the new boss fights, but I'm always left with a bitter taste in my mouth almost every time I finish them. Pause that. That sounds fucking insane. You faggot! While I find these fights to be really fun and engaging, it's also not really what I'm looking for. I feel the best example of this is the Angela boss fight. It's fast-paced. It's exciting. The original boss in terms of gameplay wasn't anything to write home about. In fact, it was atrocious. But on that same note, I feel like in the process of spicing up the gameplay and set pieces, it sacrificed a lot of the substance and impact of the OG fight. I felt violated in the original boss, but after the boss fight, that's horrible. With that being said, I did run it back a lot. I even started doing speedruns and shit. It is getting crazy. It's really fun, but it doesn't have the same brutal yet simple burn it used to have, which is fine. I was absolutely mortified. Take your pick. It's not all like this though. Like I said, the final boss fight is absolutely fantastic. I wish all the fights were designed like this. It's the perfect mix of what made it so good originally, while also adding new layers to it so you aren't done with the boss in like 2 minutes. It's dramatic, it's terrifying, and thematically consistent. And most importantly, It's emotional. I honestly think, aside from some of the iffy dialogue delivery, it's easily a better boss fight than the original. It even brought back the creepy-ass model swapping. They nailed this fight. Thank God. In terms of what the music has to offer, I, again, have no complaints. Praise is all I have to give when it comes to this fantastic soundtrack. Almost every song from the original OST is redone, and what's the right move to make. You can't replicate the same feeling that Black Fairy gives you, but you can give a new rendition here and blues inspired and has this really soulful feel to it that the original didn't have. Akira Yamaoka is a genius. Everything he touches turns to solid gold. Please give it up for the Japanese Trent Reznor. He may have the downward spiral, but Akira? He has Silent Hill 1. And that game can rot in hell. In conclusion, I love the remake. Is it perfect? No, of course not. But I never wanted it to be perfect, because that would imply it replaces the original, which is something that could never happen, and was never the goal to begin with. It's best to just enjoy it as its own thing. Appreciate it for the moment, because it's not too often you get a remake this good. Instead of nitpicking and being really shallow with the game, like me, buy the game, support the team, so you can encourage other companies to not be so fucking sloppy when doing reimaginings of classic titles. Considering the amount of pressure Blooper Team was facing in the industry, all the slander they were getting, and good-for-nothing hit-piece articles aimed at them, this is incredibly impressive, and I applaud them. I've been eating crow ever since the game released, and I've been eating it with a smile on my face. It's quite literally just Silent Hill if it was made today, and I think that's the best thing you could ask for. Despite my gripes here and there, I am genuinely surprised. Blooper Team, you did good. You did really good. Here's hoping Metal Gear Solid 3 comes out just as well. It probably won't, but hey, at least it won't be like Bloodlines. Thank you for watching, everyone. I am gonna go and get the Maria ending. That's right, I was this simp all along. I had you guys fooled, didn't I? Didn't I? No? Well, fuck you guys then. Thanks for watching. I have more content on the way, so stay tuned. Let me answer a couple questions I've been getting recently. Will you review Stalker Gamma? No. On second thought, yeah, sure. It's pretty good. There you go, there's your review. I feel like with Stalker Gamma, I'd basically just be repeating myself. I don't mind reviewing more mod overhauls, but it's gotta have a lot more meat on it for me to really dissect it, you know? I don't like making 5-minute long videos doing a jerk circle about something I moderately like. It's gotta be something that I have a lot of passion for, or else it's not gonna come out as a good video. At least by my standards. Then again, I'm no stranger to making slop, so, you know. Who's keeping track? Not me. Review Escape from Tarkov. Well, that's not even a question, that's just a fucking demand. What am I, a Chinese sweatshop worker? I love it. I will say this, Escape from Tarkov has a very interesting history. Even though extraction shooters aren't exactly my niche, I do really respect the hardcore first-person shooter roots it so firmly plants itself in. But damn, you know, as of right now, not too many people like Tarkov. Me personally, I just wanted to play Escape from Tarkov but in single player. And that's when I found out about Stalker Anomaly, conveniently enough, and you guys know how that went. Will you be reviewing the other Silent Hill games? Yes, absolutely. But those videos are gonna take a bit, as you might expect. I got a lot of things planned for those projects, so I gotta take time to develop them. In the meantime, I'm gonna be taking it easy, working on music, and also making little smaller videos on other things that I'm interested in. We still amateurs in this bitch, big time. Again, thank you guys for the support, it's very endearing, and screw it. Have one more outro for old time's sake.
I know what you are. I know why I needed you. But it's all over now.